out of the taxi after a week visiting my sister in Colorado. I expected a quiet evening and a cup of tea in my favorite chair. Instead, 4 suitcases sat neatly on the sidewalk, mine, beaded with rain. On top of the largest bag lay a single note. "If you want to stay here, we have the garage. Your loving daughter-in-law." For a moment I just stared, the drizzle starting to soak my hair. This was the house Richard and I built when Gregory was a baby. Every tree, every wall, every memory. I was the one still covering the mortgage, even after signing it over to my son and his wife. Before the driver even pulled away, I called the bank. "Mrs. Wilson," the agent confirmed, "your automatic payment cleared last Friday. $1,867, exactly as I knew it would." The sky opened in a sudden downpour as I unlocked the garage. A thin mattress waited against the wall, a nightstand and lamp beside it. Boxes labeled Mom's Stuff, Vanessa's brisk handwriting, held my books and photos. Through the tiny window I could see the home where I'd raised my son, buried my husband, and apparently lost my place. My phone buzzed. "Mom, we need the space. Vanessa's wanted a home office for months. The garage has everything you need. Don't make this hard," as if I were the problem. I thought of the nights I'd sat up with Gregory through asthma attacks, the second job I'd taken to pay for his college, the weekends spent babysitting so he and Vanessa could have time together, and now this. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Martha, my oldest friend. Her voice softened the moment she heard me. "I need a place to stay," I managed. "They've put me in the garage." "I'm on my way," she said. Rain hammered the roof as I waited, sitting on that thin mattress, surrounded by the boxed-up pieces of my life. 35 years of love and work weren't so easily dismissed. I wasn't just Gregory's mother or Richard's widow. I was Audrey Wilson, and I was finished being invisible. Martha's spare room wasn't fancy, but it had a locking door and real sunlight. After 3 nights at the Sunset Hotel, I was grateful for anything that felt like home. "You can stay as long as you need," Martha said, handing me a mug of coffee. "This is your house we're talking about," she added firmly. "The one you're still paying for." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug and felt something I hadn't in days. Resolve. This story isn't over. Stay with me until the end and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this journey travels. Unlike my own son, Martha never forgot who I was. Before I faded into the background. "I keep wondering when it all began," I said, staring into my coffee. "After Richard passed, I thought signing the house over to Gregory and Vanessa would help them. They just had Emma. Money was tight. And they took advantage," Martha finished quietly. The memories surfaced like bruises I'd tried not to touch. 6 months after the funeral, Vanessa began updating the house. My ideas were brushed aside. My things migrated from closets to the basement, then into storage bins. When I protested, as she cleared out Richard's fishing gear, she told me, "We need to move forward, not live in a museum," as if my husband's memory was clutter. "What about Gregory? Didn't he defend you?" Martha asked. I let out a hollow laugh. "He said I was being difficult, that I needed to adapt to their new normal. The changes were so gradual I hardly noticed. Complaints about my cooking, my TV volume, my friends visiting, even my gardening. Every small surrender only emboldened them. And I let it happen," I admitted. "I kept paying the mortgage because I was afraid they'd struggle. I wanted to help, to be needed. You wanted to be loved," Martha said softly. The truth of it stung. I'd been buying my place in that house, one payment at a time. My phone buzzed. "Mom, when are you coming for the rest of your things? We need the garage for Emma's playroom." I showed Martha the message, my hand trembling. "That ungrateful..." She stopped herself. Then her voice hardened. "Audrey, there's something you should know. I didn't want to tell you, but you deserve the truth. At book club last month, Vanessa had a few glasses of wine. She said they're putting the house on the market. They want that new build in Oakwood Hills." The room tilted. "They're selling my house." "They think it's their house," Martha said. "Legally it is. Morally, it's another story." Images flashed through my mind, bringing baby Gregory home. Birthday parties, Richard planting the anniversary garden, his last breaths in our bedroom. All of it about to be sold to strangers. "What am I going to do?" I whispered. "First," Martha said, "you stop paying their mortgage. Let the bank call them. But my credit. Second, you talk to my nephew, Brian. He's a lawyer who handles elder rights cases." "I'm not elderly," I protested. "You're old enough to demand respect," she replied. And she was right. For 2 years, I'd made myself smaller to avoid being a burden. And where had it gotten me? Evicted to a garage, my life packed in boxes. Beneath the hurt, a slow, unfamiliar anger began to burn. Okay, I said, straightening. Let's talk to Brian. That's my girl, Martha said. Remember who you are. You're not just Gregory's mother or Richard's widow. You're Audrey Wilson. And it's time everyone remembered that for the first time since finding my suitcases on the sidewalk, I felt something stronger than grief, determination. Brian, Martha's nephew, looked more like a college professor than a lawyer in his jeans and Henley. But his eyes were sharp as he scanned my mortgage statements. So, he said, you've been making payments on a house that isn't legally yours while your son and daughter-in-law plan to sell it. Put that plainly, it sounded unbelievable, even to me. Yes, I admitted. And they moved you into the garage? I nodded, heat rising in my face. You have options, Brian said. Those payments could be viewed as a verbal contract. At the very least, you can recover the money you've put in since the transfer. Martha finally spoke. But first, she needs to confront them. Make them understand exactly what they've done. Brian looked doubtful, but I knew Martha was right. Before any courtroom, I needed to face my own son. I knew I had to give my son one final chance to make things right. That's how I ended up on the porch of my own house the next morning, heart hammering as I pressed the doorbell. I'd lived here since before Gregory was born, yet I was now a visitor needing permission to enter. Vanessa opened the door, surprise flashing across her face before she masked it with a polite smile. Audrey, we weren't expecting you. I need to speak with you and Gregory, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The living room looked different again. My reading room, gone. The family photos I'd arranged on the mantel, rearranged with several of Richard missing. Gregory walked in, drying his hands on a dish towel. Mom, what are you doing here? I came to talk about the house, I said. Martha told me you're planning to sell it. The quick glance they exchanged said everything. We were going to tell you, Gregory admitted, not quite meeting my eyes. Once everything was finalized, my voice rose. This was my home for 35 years. Your father and I built it. We raised you here. Vanessa exhaled sharply. Audrey, we understand this place is special to you, but we have to do what's best for our family now. Your family, I repeated. And what am I? Silence. Gregory finally spoke, his tone almost patronizing. Mom, you signed the house over to us. We appreciate everything you've done, but it's our property now. We decide what happens to it. I drew a breath. I've been paying the mortgage for the last 2 years. Every month, $18.67 from my account to keep a roof over your heads. Another quick glance. They already knew. That was your choice, Vanessa said coolly. We never asked you to do that. My hands trembled. I did it to help you. Because that's what family does. And we're grateful, Gregory replied, though his voice carried little gratitude. That doesn't change the legal facts. The house is ours. So my 35 years here, my financial support, my role in this family, none of that matters. Gregory shrugged. Mom, you're making this more dramatic than it needs to be. We can help you find a nice senior apartment. I don't need a senior apartment, I snapped. I need my son to show a shred of decency and respect. Vanessa stepped forward, smile tightening. Audrey, you're getting emotional. Maybe we should continue this conversation another time. That was the moment I knew. There was no fixing this. The boy I'd raised was gone. In his place stood a stranger who saw me as an obligation, a problem to be managed. I've stopped the automatic mortgage payments, I said quietly. Gregory's head jerked up. You what? If you want to sell my home, you'll pay for it yourselves. You can't do that, Vanessa burst out. What about our credit? We have plans. Yes, I said, turning toward the door. I hear Oakwood Hills is lovely this time of year. Gregory's face hardened. Mom, the house was Dad's gift to me. It was never really yours. The word struck like a physical blow. Never really yours. I see, I whispered. Then there's nothing left to discuss. I paused at the doorway and looked back. Your father would be ashamed of you, Gregory. And for the first time, so am I. I closed the door behind me. The spring air cooled my flushed cheeks as I walked down the driveway, away from the house that had never truly been mine. Something inside me had broken, but something stronger had formed in its place. You did what? Martha asked later, her coffee mug frozen midair. I stopped the payments, I repeated, still stunned by my own resolve. If they want to sell, they can pay for it themselves. Martha set her mug down with a decisive thunk. It's about time. Brian, who had insisted on joining us, looked more cautious. It's a solid first step, he said, tapping a pen against his legal pad. But we need to protect you. With your name off the title, you could be on the hook for missed payments without any claim to the property. The adrenaline that carried me through the confrontation began to fade, doubt creeping in. Have I made a terrible mistake? No, Martha said firmly. You finally stood up for yourself. Brian nodded. Now we'll be strategic. I'll contact the bank tomorrow and review every option. In the meantime, gather every record showing you made those payments. I thought of the meticulous files Richard had taught me to keep. Thankfully, all in order. And what about the belongings you still have in that house? I asked. Martha squared her shoulders. We'll handle that next. For the first time in years, I felt more than hurt. I felt powerful. Martha's eyes flashed with that old protective spark. I'll go with you to collect the rest of your things, she said. And if they give us trouble, I still remember how to swing a softball bat. Despite everything, I laughed, a sound I hadn't made in days. Martha had been defending me since high school, back when she chased off the girls who mocked my secondhand clothes. I don't know what I'd do without you both, I said, my voice catching. Brian reached over and squeezed my hand. You're not alone in this, Mrs. Wilson. We'll make sure they don't take advantage of you again. The next morning, the phone rang. This is Trevor Phillips from First Federal Bank, a calm voice said. We need to discuss the mortgage on Maple Avenue. I braced for trouble. Yes, that's correct, I replied. I understand you've been making payments on a property no longer in your name. Our records show 26 months of consistent payments. Yes, I confirmed, but I've decided to stop. A pause. Mrs. Wilson, I don't normally do this, but would you come into the branch? There may be options you haven't considered. 2 hours later, I sat across from Trevor, a kind-faced man about Gregory's age. He explained something I'd never heard of, an equitable lien. Because you've paid the mortgage without benefit of ownership, he said, you may have a legal interest in the property. They can't sell without addressing that lien. Hope flickered for the first time since I'd found my suitcases on the sidewalk. What does that mean exactly? It means you can protect the money you've invested. Trevor lowered his voice. Your son called this morning, very upset about the missed payment. He seemed unaware of how mortgages work. I wasn't surprised. Gregory had always relied on others. First Richard and me, now Vanessa, and apparently my monthly checks. What did you tell him? I asked. That missed payments damage credit and can lead to foreclosure, Trevor said. He didn't take it well. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text. Mom, we need to talk about the mortgage as soon as possible. Trevor looked at me. What would you like to do, Mrs. Wilson? Such a simple question, one no one had asked me in years. What did I want? Not just about the house, but about my life. I pictured Gregory and Vanessa dismissing my contributions, assuming I'd bankroll their dreams while living in the garage. I want what's rightfully mine, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Trevor nodded, respect clear in his eyes. Then let's make that happen. That afternoon, armed with Trevor's information and Brian's legal advice, I took another unexpected step. I applied for a job. A help wanted sign in the window of Rosie's Cafe had caught my eye on the walk back to Martha's house. You want to wait tables? Martha raised an eyebrow when I told her. I was a waitress all through college, I reminded her. I need my own income, my own life. I can't hide in your spare room forever, Martha grinned. Well, Rosie's does have the best pie in town. 2 days later, I worked my first shift. By closing time, my feet ached and my back protested, but the tips in my pocket were mine, earned by my own hands. The simple satisfaction of that was something I hadn't felt in years. Back at Martha's, tired but strangely energized, I noticed 6 missed calls from Gregory. I listened to the first voicemail. Mom, the bank called about the mortgage. They mentioned something about a lien. What are you doing? Call me back immediately. I deleted it without listening to the rest. For once, Gregory would wait for my convenience, not the other way around. Martha joined me on the porch swing with a glass of wine. How does it feel? She asked softly. I watched the sunset spill pink and gold across the sky. It feels like I'm finally waking up, I said. Like I've been sleepwalking since Richard died. And now, Martha said, finishing for me. You're Audrey again. I raised my glass in a small toast. To Audrey Wilson. It's nice to finally meet her. 3 weeks later, I'd settled into a rhythm at Rosie's. The tips were modest but steady. The work kept my mind clear, and for the first time in years, I had purpose. a life that belonged entirely to me. The last person I expected to see at Rosie's cafe was Gregory. He stood stiffly by the hostess stand, looking oddly out of place among the lunch crowd. "Mom," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard in years. "Can we talk?" Rosa, the owner, caught my eye from behind the counter. "Take 15 if you need it, Audrey," she said with a knowing nod. I led Gregory to a quiet corner booth, away from the regulars who had become like friends. "You look different," he said, studying me. I smoothed my apron. "I am different." He shifted uneasily. "Mom, about the house?" "I'm not discussing that here," I cut in. "If that's why you came, you're wasting your time." "Please?" His voice carried a trace of desperation. "Vanessa and I, we're in trouble. The bank called about a lien, and our credit is taking a hit because of the missed payments." I looked at him, his expensive watch, perfectly styled hair, the faint scent of designer cologne. Everything about him spoke of comfort built on someone else's sacrifice. "What do you want from me, Gregory?" "We need you to lift the lien and resume the payments, just until we can sell the house." The sheer audacity almost made me laugh. "And what do I get in return?" "We'll make sure you're taken care of," he offered, as though it were a grand favor. "There's a really nice senior community in Westbrook." "Stop," I said, raising my hand. "I'm not interested in being taken care of. I've been taking care of myself and of you for years." "Mom, be reasonable." "You can't keep working here," he said, gesturing around the cafe. "You're almost 60. 58, I corrected. "And I'm doing just fine." His expression hardened, the mask of contrition slipping. "Fine. What do you want? A percentage of the sale?" I studied him, this stranger wearing my son's face. "I want my home back." He blinked, then gave a nervous laugh. "That's not possible." "We've already made an offer on the house in Oakwood Hills." "Not my problem." Gregory's jaw tightened. "It is your problem if you want a relationship with your granddaughter, with any of us." The threat hung in the air like smoke. "Are you telling me I can't see Emma?" He looked briefly ashamed but pressed on. "I'm saying families need to support each other. Vanessa and I have a plan for our future, and you're standing in the way. The way I stood in the way when I paid your college tuition? When I watched Emma every weekend so you and Vanessa could have time together? When I signed over the house and kept paying the mortgage so you could save for that boat last summer?" Gregory flushed. "That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It isn't." My break was nearly over. I slid from the booth and straightened my apron. I need to get back to work. "Mom, please," he said, his voice cracking. "We need this." "The Oakwood Hills house is perfect. We can't lose it." For a heartbeat, I saw the little boy who once ran to me with scraped knees, certain I could fix anything. But that boy was gone. In his place sat a man who saw me only as a means to an end. "I'll think about it," I said at last. "But I need something in writing from you and Vanessa first." "Meet me at Brian Wallace's office tomorrow at 2. Relief washed across his face. "Thank you, Mom. You won't regret this." As he left, I wondered if I already did. The next afternoon, I arrived early at Brian's office, my stomach in knots from a sleepless night. Gregory and Vanessa arrived right on time, dressed as if for a corporate meeting. Vanessa's smile was tight, triumphant. "Thank you for coming," Brian began. "Mrs. Wilson has considered your request regarding the Maple Avenue property. We're certain we can reach an agreement that benefits everyone," Vanessa said smoothly. Brian slid a document across the desk. "This is what Mrs. Wilson proposes." Gregory picked it up, scanning the lines. His face shifted from hope to confusion to anger in seconds. "What is this?" he demanded. "That," I said calmly, "is my condition for lifting the lien. I will resume the mortgage payments, but the house will be sold back to me, not to strangers." Vanessa snatched the paper. "This is ridiculous. You want us to sell you the house for the remaining mortgage balance? It's worth 3 times that." "It's worth exactly what I've put into it," I replied. 35 years of payments, repairs, and love. Gregory's face flushed crimson. "You can't do this." "The house is legally ours, with a lien against it," Brian added evenly, "which makes any sale very complicated." "We'll fight this," Vanessa said, her voice cold. "We'll get our own lawyer." I nodded, unsurprised. "You can try. But legal proceedings take months, maybe years. Your credit will keep slipping, and that dream home in Oakwood Hills will belong to someone else." The truth settled over the room like a weight. Gregory and Vanessa had stretched themselves thin, betting on a quick sale of my house to fund their upgrade. You planned this, Gregory said, his voice barely a whisper. From the moment we moved you to the garage. No, I answered quietly. I just finally stopped letting myself be used. Vanessa shot to her feet. We need to talk privately. They stepped into the hallway. Brian gave me a steady nod. You're doing the right thing, Mrs. Wilson. I wished I felt as certain. The look of betrayal in my son's eyes lingered, sharp as glass. Had I become as cold as they had? A few minutes later, the door opened. Gregory and Vanessa returned, faces drawn and resigned. We'll accept your offer, Gregory said stiffly. But I hope you understand what this means for our relationship. I met his gaze. I do. And I hope someday you'll understand what it meant when you left my suitcases on the sidewalk. The first night back in my own house, I couldn't sleep. I wandered from room to room, fingertips tracing familiar walls, pausing at the doorframe where we'd marked Gregory's height each year, standing in the kitchen where Richard and I once danced on our 30th anniversary. 3 months had passed since that tense meeting. 3 months of paperwork, of tense exchanges as Gregory and Vanessa moved out, of slowly reclaiming a life that was mine. The house felt both familiar and strange. Vanessa's trendy grays and whites covered the warm yellows and blues Richard and I had chosen. But beneath the new paint, the soul of the place remained, the squeaky third stair, the golden afternoon light through the bay window, the gentle tilt of the upstairs hallway Richard never quite fixed. I stood in the master bedroom, furnished only with the bed I'd borrowed from Martha's spare room. This was where Richard and I had shared a lifetime and where he had taken his final breath. I'm home, I whispered. The silence that followed wasn't lonely, just peaceful. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Martha stood there with a pot of soup and a bottle of wine. Housewarming, she declared, striding inside. Though it's really a homecoming, I laughed. Feels like both. She surveyed the kitchen with a theatrical gasp. What on earth did that woman do to your beautiful oak cabinets? Painted them gray and swapped the handles for something called brushed nickel, I said dryly. Apparently oak is passé. Martha snorted. You know what's truly passé? Throwing your mother-in-law out on the street. We both laughed, though the ache beneath the humor remained. Have you heard from them? She asked. I shook my head. Not since the closing. Gregory made it clear he thinks I chose the house over them. That's not what happened, Martha said firmly. You chose self-respect. Big difference. I wasn't sure Gregory would ever see it that way, but I had made peace. Letting them use me while treating me like an afterthought was no longer an option. To new beginnings, Martha said, uncorking the wine. We clinked glasses, and I felt a rush of gratitude for the friend who had stood beside me when my own family would not. The weeks found a gentle rhythm. Mornings at Rosie's Cafe, afternoons spent adding warmth back into the house. Bright throw pillows, family photos restored to the mantel. Richard's fishing gear displayed proudly in the den. One crisp Saturday, I knelt in the front garden, planting tulip bulbs, when a familiar car pulled into the driveway. My heart thudded as Gregory stepped out, hands in his pockets. He hovered at the edge of the garden. The flowers look nice, he said quietly. I nodded, unsure of my voice. Dad always loved tulips, he added, eyes traveling across the yard. I remember him planting them every fall. The wind carried the scent of fresh earth between us, an unspoken memory of the man who had bound us both to this home. I brushed the dirt from my hands and looked up. What brings you here, Gregory? He shifted, eyes down. We didn't get the house in Oakwood Hills. I wasn't surprised. Their credit had likely taken too many hits after the missed payments. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it, despite everything. Gregory scuffed his expensive loafers in the garden soil. We found an apartment instead. It's small, but it's teaching us some perspective, I guess. I waited, sensing more. Vanessa's pregnant again, he added quietly. The baby's due in January. Congratulations, I said softly, wondering if this news was meant to remind me of what I'd been cut off from. He finally met my eyes. Emma asks about you. She doesn't understand why we don't visit Grandma anymore. A sharp, sweet ache pierced my chest. I miss my granddaughter fiercely. She's welcome here any time, I said. So are you. Gregory nodded, hesitated. Mom, I've been thinking about everything that happened. I held my breath, daring to hope. I'm not saying we handled things well, he continued carefully, but you chose a house over your family. I don't know if I can forgive that. The small hope inside me collapsed. He still didn't see it. I didn't choose a house, Gregory, I said quietly. I chose not to be erased. There's a difference. He frowned, unconvinced. Anyway, I thought you should know about the baby. And maybe Emma could visit sometimes, if that's okay. It wasn't an apology, not even close. But it was a small opening, a crack in the wall between us. I like that, I said. After Gregory left, I sat on the porch swing, letting the encounter settle. Our relationship was still fractured. He might never understand the depth of the hurt, the betrayal. But he had come today. He'd reached out, however imperfectly. It was a start, not an ending. That evening, Martha and her husband Jim arrived with Rosa from the cafe, and Brian with his wife. We gathered in my backyard, the same yard where Richard and I had celebrated anniversaries and where Gregory's high school graduation party once filled the night with laughter. As twilight deepened, conversation flowed easily among these people who had become my chosen family. A quiet peace wrapped around me. Toast, Martha declared, raising her glass. To Audrey Wilson, who reminds us all it's never too late to reclaim your life. Glasses clinked, warm smiles surrounded me. Later, beneath a sky scattered with stars, I sat alone on the porch, listening to the house's familiar creaks and sighs. I thought of Richard, of the life we built, of the son we raised who had somehow lost his way. I thought of the woman I'd become these past months, stronger, more determined, unwilling to be diminished for anyone's convenience. The house around me was more than wooden walls. It was proof of survival, of resilience, of the quiet power of a woman who finally learned to put herself first. I was home, not just in this house, but in my own life. And for the first time in years, that life stretched before me, wide open, full of possibilities that were entirely my own.